what's up? This is Tajay of the Mighty Souls of Mischief crew. I'm chilling with my man Festo, my man A+, and my man Oak. You know he's dope. And right now, we're just maxing in the studio. We're hailing from East Oakland, California.
Hello everybody, it's Laura here with Silk and Coupe, and today I have a very fun and special and kind of unexpected guest. This is Tessa Marr of Mad Media, and she runs a social media agency. So thank you for being here with me today.
Well, thanks for having me.
So let's talk about how impactful and influential social media is, and tell me a little bit about what it is that you do.
Yeah, I mean, social media has really changed the way that we market, that marketers really need to reach their target audiences these days. And marketing's been around for forever, and I think people have been really comfortable with that idea that you need to participate in certain activities and campaigns to reach their people. But it used to be all about billboards and bus advertising and print, and that kind of stuff was really what made the impact. And these days, we don't even always have brick and mortar shops. Sometimes it's just our digital space. People aren't walking down the street anymore looking around at what's around them, so that those types of activities are just much less impactful. They're walking around, and we've all seen it, it's a little dangerous, but we're all walking around looking down at our phones.
Yeah.
So I think for businesses these days and brands, they really need to pay attention to how do they get in front of those people. And so we have to ask ourselves, what are we all doing staring at our phones?
Yeah.
I think we know the answer to that.
Absolutely.
Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. So I think that's why we really need to pay attention to the trends that are coming our way with social media, for sure.
100%. Just being so entrenched in the wine industry myself, there are certain wineries that have really bought in and they're really killing the social media game, but there are others, well, I think a lot, that are still kind of slow on the uptake. Could you comment on that? Why there's this sort of resistance?
I don't necessarily know why there's the resistance, but I do see it as a really huge opportunity because, like you said, there's certain brands that stand out to you on social, and being people that are, clearly both of us are using social media very, very regularly. We remember those brands and we connect with them in a much greater way than some of the ones that, might have a really beautiful wine shop down there, but if you're not out here, if you're not driving by, or if you're not immersed in the industry, we might not remember them.
Yeah.
Right? So this is a way for, sure, great. Wine touring during the summer, you discover all these really great gems, that's fantastic. And then you leave and go home and you forget all about these brands. Or potentially, if they're doing something great with their social, then we might want to connect with them on social, follow along, and then they become part of our memory. It's something that comes up for us over and over again, and we have a very different experience of the brand. So, it's something I'd love to see wineries doing more of.
Yeah.
Especially in the Okanagan here, I feel like, it's such a small niche industry, and social media really allows you to reach so many more people.
Yeah.
I don't know, I think it's something that if more people took some time and invested in it, I think we could see some huge impacts for
Absolutely.
sure.
So I guess going back to the whole aversion thing with regards to utilizing it more regularly, a comment that I did hear in the past with some wineries that I've worked for is that there's no way to really track calls to action or conversion. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I'm going to go back to my example about the billboards and print and all of that. So this is something that I talk to clients about a lot, and I'm a big believer in metrics. I absolutely believe it's important to prove ROI wherever you can. But marketing has never been an exact science. Like, we have never been able to prove, generally speaking, the impact that all these things have had, and yet we know they matter. We know a good logo matters, we know good customer service matters, but we can't necessarily always prove that with data. With social media, we actually have way more data than we've ever had in the past. You can track impressions, you can see how many people saw your tweet as opposed to guessing how many people drove past your billboard. We have so much more to go by. So it's important to be tracking those metrics. And no, you're probably not going to be able to say, I sold that bottle of wine because I posted that Instagram. You're just not, generally speaking. But you can glean so much from the metrics that we do have access to, as long as you're tracking them on a regular basis and you know how to understand them. And sometimes you need someone with a little bit of experience there to help. But you can gain so much knowledge about what's working and what's not working, what your target market loves to see. And to the point with calls to action and conversions, they're actually with online sales, there is a way to definitely track that. And even with Instagram, take Instagram for an example, once you get to a certain follower level, you're allowed to put links in your Instagram stories and things like that. And so you can track those. You can use promo codes and track those. Those are just some of the examples of things that we do with clients to help prove our impacts. Because I understand from a business owner's perspective, they want to be able to, have some some trust that where they're putting their dollars is making impacts for sure.
Do you think it's because it's more about the experience and wanting people to come to the winery? Or do you think that that would be more of a draw? Like, what has been your experience in that regard?
I mean, I think in a perfect world, if we could have everybody come into our winery, I think that as the business owner, as the head of marketing or whoever you are, you can trust that they're getting maybe the most polished, most intimate experience of your brand, and probably the most likely to buy.
Yeah.
You know, perfect world. But that also limits you, right? Because there's only so many people that are going to drive through the Okanagan and stop at one of the, you know, what is it, 260 some wineries that are here, right?
Yeah.
Like, so sure, that's best case scenario. But let's, you know, if you stop there, you're only going to ever reach so many sales. What if you took that tasting room experience and tried to broaden it, tried to reach way more people with that same style of experience via a digital platform like social media? You know, I mean, we've talked about this, obviously the authenticity piece behind social media, that's why it's so popular, is that people really want to be able to connect with the brands and you know, the people in their lives and the brands in their life. So I think the tasting room is a great example of that. You know, we've known for or wineries, I should say, have known for a really long time that personal experience has a great impact on sales, telling their story. You know, of course the tasting piece matters, but I think you had a post the other day, which I loved, you know, about what makes the tasting room experience the best for you. Is it the wine? Is it the people behind there? Is it the story, etc.? I love that because I totally agree. I've been wine tasting out here for years, and sometimes my most favorite experiences aren't necessarily the ones with a particular type of wine. If it's a really dry experience, then it really colors how I feel about the brand and therefore how I want to consume the product, right? So we can do the same thing with social media. If we can take the people that we're staffing our tasting rooms with and get them to put out some really authentic content about what's going on in there, you can start to have these really powerful impacts on the people that are consuming that content who may or may not be able to come into our tasting room. And if they have the opportunity to purchase online, well, fantastic.
Yeah, that's a really great point. So let's talk about just building a brand, because I know a lot of people that are watching this either work at wineries or they have their own personal blogs or brands themselves. What are, you know, the key elements and factors that are required in building a really strong brand?
Big question. I would say the biggest thing that comes to mind when you ask that is consistency for me. I think really defining who your brand is and who it isn't. One of the things that we always do with our clients whenever we bring somebody on that we start working with is we build up a social media strategy. And you know, that's really important because every brand is going to look a little bit different, and it should. That's okay. It's just like personalities. So one of the first steps that we take in building that social media strategy is we define the brand's tone. You know, in addition to the objectives and the target market and all those types of things, we really talk about who would your brand be if your brand was a person. So there's a lot of work that's done in persona marketing within target markets because it's an easier way for people to think about a target market as opposed to like an age bracket, right? And the same goes for building your own brand. What would your brand say? What wouldn't your brand say? You know, if your brand was one of those girls at a wine party, which one would she be? Like, would she be the wine snob? Would she be a little bit, held back and really professional, a little bit, I don't want to say hoity-toity, but, or would she be the sloppier one with rips in her jeans and who, maybe has a little bit of wine taste by the end of the night and, makes the best jokes and everyone remembers her for her puns, and all of that's okay. But I think it's really important to figure out who you are and who you aren't, especially when you have a bigger team working to represent your brand. I mean, if you're one person, it's pretty easy to figure out and to know organically what you would and wouldn't do. But if you have a number of people representing that brand, you really need to spend some time defining it so that whether people are in the tasting room, on your website, interacting with you on social media, they're having the same experience and they feel connected to the same person, same entity. Yeah, I think that has a big impact.
So with respect to the whole brand conversation, what are some wineries, in your opinion, and it doesn't necessarily just have to be Okanagan, would you say are really killing it at the social media game, and why?
One of the brands that I love locally for sure is Church and State. They just, they're doing some pretty unique, fun things, I think, out there. So that's kind of cool. Blasted Church as well. I got to give them some love. I actually have done a little bit of work with them just at an event. But they work with another social media agency I know, and they, I don't know, they've done a really good job with their branding overall. I think there's a story there. They carry it through the tasting room, their labels, their social, all of that. So I think, the success story there is that they really spend some time putting, putting some effort into that. And I think that makes a big impact for sure. I have to give some credit to Mission Hill, obviously. Mission Hill's, clearly a bigger entity, and so they have a huge,
Reach.
Staff and resource to be able to do that. But of course, they're consistent in that way, which is great. But there's a lot of, smaller wineries as well. Like even with Twitter, which I think at this point, Instagram's generally one of the bigger ones in terms of the platforms that I think have relevance here, and there's a few for sure. But even with Twitter, like moving to the Okanagan or coming out here a couple of years ago, there's a lot of wineries with Twitter presence, and you can quickly see who's responding and who's posting regularly and who's authentic and who's really just trying to push out content. But it's a much bigger presence than I expected in terms of at least having an account. Anyway, doing it right and making some impacts with it is a little bit trickier. But it's I created a list on my own Twitter of all the Okanagan wineries, and just scrolling through that on a regular basis, you can see who stands out so quickly and who doesn't. And those are going to end up being the people that you interact with more, right? So,
and that's really what it's about, is the engagement factor.
Exactly.
Too. So, what platforms, in terms of in order of relevance, would you suggest from, I guess, a winery perspective, are the most useful platforms to be using right now?
Yeah, I would say Instagram for sure is definitely going to be one of them. And I think beyond just Instagram, it needs to be Instagram stories. We need to be using Instagram stories as well. I read a statistic the other day, and this changes constantly, so this will be relevant. This is my official response right now, but ask me again in a couple of months, and I'm sure there's a whole new platform that will have showed up. But yeah, I read a statistic the other day that said 60% of Instagram users are no longer scrolling through their feed, they're just watching stories. So my team and I are like, oh my God, okay, we have to contact all of our clients, we need to refine our strategies, which you constantly need to be doing. It's just the nature of social media, which makes it fun but exhausting.
Well, it makes it really challenging, because it's like you feel like you just kind of get it, and then you're like, oh, I gotta switch it up again.
Seriously,
it's really tiring.
Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, why did I get into this industry? But there's never a dull moment. And it's why I like to say, the term, there's so many different ways that someone working in social media can refer to themselves, and some people will use the term social media expert. And I was like, well, I could claim to be a social media expert today, right now, but by tomorrow I won't be again, so it's just kind of the nature of it. You're always learning, and it's always changing, but it really keeps us on our feet, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Evaluating at all times and changing as we need to suit our target market. But yeah, I would say, so Instagram, definitely with a strong presence in Instagram stories, not being afraid to be authentic and get a little bit raw with it. It can make it a really approachable platform for people, for sure. Facebook's kind of become like our yellow pages, I guess, for lack of a better word. If you don't have a Facebook page, it's almost like you're not legitimate. And it's a great place to collect reviews as well, which is another good thing about Facebook, for sure. So those ones for sure, I would say. And then it would depend on the region, but I think Twitter still has some relevance for wineries, at least from what I've seen here in the Okanagan. A lot of the winemakers are on Twitter, actually. And participate in some wine chats and things like that. So it might be
wine chats every Wednesday. Sandra Oldfield.
She's awesome. So it's really cool to be able to connect and actually have conversations with those people, directly, which is why social media is so powerful, because you can do that as opposed to having to call customer service or write a letter, whatever you used to have to do back in the day. Those would be the top three off the cuff. But again, it's not to say that you can't get a little creative too. One of the things we do with our clients always is, in building that social strategy, is we do a competitive analysis. So we look at all the competitors, or some of the competitors in their space, to see what they're doing well, and maybe areas too where we see an opportunity that no one else has jumped on yet, and then we give it a try. So, there might be
trial and error.
Exactly.
Take a swing at it. So, if you were a winery, and say you chose your personality, it was very crystal clear. What sort of, top 5 things would you be doing consistently? Would you be posting wine reviews, food and wine recommendations? What would you be doing? What do you think is the most impactful? Because there's so many people talking about wine on Instagram, and from all types of different backgrounds and education. And honestly, I'm kind of flabbergasted at the people who have huge followings, and they don't really have that much wine knowledge.
Right.
So I don't even think knowledge is important.
What do they have? The prettiest voice?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Right? I know, just to laugh, but I think it depends. I think there's a ton of things that you can do. You could create a whole big idea board of all the stuff that you want to try, and the best way to probably go about it is to take that really big idea board and start trying a few things and see what resonates. You just have to kind of evaluate. some of the ideas that I love for sure that I would personally love to see is like, you know, opportunities to provide pairings, suggestions for pairings. I think it's something that, you know, people do in tasting rooms all the time, and you allow people, and I mean, people have done it in marketing forever, you allow people to start to picture the moment that they would be using or enjoying your product or service, and all of a sudden, you know, they have to have it because they've created this. So I think pairings are a really cool way to do that, particularly with wine. You know, in a tasting room, they're like, oh, I would have this with you know, barbecue ribs on a Friday night at the end of your workday, and they're like, yeah, I'll take 2 of those. Like, you know, you can't picture your Friday without it, kind of a thing. So yeah, pairings I think are a huge opportunity. Another thing that I would love to see, and I think this has kind of been a trend with the wine industry overall. Now, I'm not necessarily an expert, I'm just an avid participant. But I feel like over the last, I don't know, the number of years, maybe 10, 20 years kind of a thing, in my lifetime anyway, I feel like wine has gone from being this really unapproachable, you know, I don't know anything about wine, I don't know how to order a glass of it kind of a thing, to these days, I mean, wineries and wine brands all over the place are creating, you know, much more fun, lighthearted, sort of relaxed wines. And I think what that's doing is it's allowing more people to participate in wine, right? More people to purchase it without feeling intimidated by it. So I love that. I love, you know, there's a lot of in-depth knowledge, and there's a lot of history to the wine industry, and that's great. That's fantastic. There's a ton to learn, and you know, it's something that I like to know a little bit about, but I also like the idea that you don't have to. You know, like so demystifying the wine industry, I think there's a huge opportunity in doing that, and that will allow you to connect with a much greater target market.
No kidding.
You know, like I told someone the other day that the term varietal just means like grape. She was like, oh my God, I've always felt like such an idiot, so I've been too embarrassed to ask. And I was like, oh, see, like this poor girl, right? If you just start to peel back some of those layers and be like, if you want to know all the details that went into this particular vintage and what happened in the harvest, you can. Like those layers are there for anyone that's interested. But if you just want to know what a nice glass of wine would be to have on Tuesday when you had a crappy day, that's fine. We can find that too. Or, you know, what kind of taste you prefer, we can just find that too. It can just be about your experience.
It's testament to the wineries that are doing really, really well right now, and obviously I'm affiliated with the Hatch, but I think that that's why they've seen so much success, because they're on social media, it's super consistent, it's predictable, people know what to expect, but also it's just that there's no pretension. It's like come in, drink really, really kick-ass wine with really fun people, and it's not for everybody, but we have everybody from baby boomers to millennials. They're like, this is my favorite winery, and like I think that you really hit the nail on the head with that. It's like that approachability factor. So when I see comments on social media every now and then, I saw something recently, and I'm not going to name names, but there was a quote, anybody who matters is here, and it was just this very kind of like exclusivity, cliquey kind of vibe, and it's like, who is that benefiting? That's just going to make people feel excluded, intimidated, and it's like, that's not really what it's about anymore. It's quickly going from like an old boys club to welcoming all kinds of participants. I like your use of that word. So, and social media is a big factor in that, I think.
Absolutely.
So,
I will say from a, you know, devil's advocate kind of thing, if all the wineries are starting to become that sort of really approachable, fun, laid back brand, and you wanted to stand out and do something really different with your wines or with your brand, maybe that is the approach you take, because we know there are some people in the wine industry who really like that exclusivity feel. And so, you will get a smaller target market. Absolutely you will. But there are some people that might really subscribe to that because that appeals to them, and maybe you just charge them more.
That's true.
It wouldn't necessarily be the winery I would go to, but I'm just saying, you know, it's just a great example of you could really do whatever you want with your brand. You just need to really define it and figure it out and make sure that your pricing strategy aligns with it, and your tasting room strategy aligns with it, and your communication and your tone and you know, your logo, all of that aligns. And that you're measuring the impact when it's making a difference, right?
100%. Okay, well, you know what my final question is going to be, the death row wines. So what would you, like today or whatever in this moment, what 3 wines or more or less would you select to enjoy if you were on death row?
I'm gonna pick all local.
Okay.
No, actually, that's not true. I just recently I did my WSET level 2 in January, and I fell in love with an Australian wine. But I swear to God, Jack's in Penticton, I must bring it in just to support my wine habit of it. And that's the Pipe and Strike Shiraz.
Okay.
As you'll be able to tell from this, I'm a fan of like the big, bold,
Yeah.
spicy reds.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely got to be one of them. Then one that's my favorite for a number of years now actually is a smaller vineyard down in Naramata called Mary Shell, and they do a Syrah Viognier blend.
Yeah.
So I've been following that one for a while. It's
Yeah.
really affordable, which I love, and again, they're doing something really different. Their tasting room experience is really, it's almost like going to your grandpa's house and like sitting at the,
awesome.
yeah, it's really cool. And they make, I feel like they only make the 2 varietals really, since that's what they did before.
I think they only do Rhone blends.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. When I went, the first time I went was maybe like 6 years ago or so, and it was just Syrah and Viognier, and then they blended it.
Yeah.
So it was like but I loved it. I think
Yeah.
that's really cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, that has to still, be mentioned as one of them for sure. I mean, this list could go on.
Yeah.
And then the other one I'm going to say, another Syrah, so shocking here.
Yeah.
You notice a pattern with me.
Yeah.
Is the Syrah from Veg 1775.
Oh, okay.
It's and yeah, obviously I've, affiliated with them, but but I love their Syrah. It's absolutely hands down my favorite. It is the one that I would say that you pair with ribs on a Friday night on the barbecue
nice.
for sure. But for me, I love a big red that's smooth enough to drink on its own that you don't have to pair.
Yeah.
And that's what that one is to me. It's a little bit more on the medium bodied side, and it's got a bit of like pepper in the finish, spicy, smoky, yeah. Tobacco kind of. It's what every man should smell like.
That's awesome.
Right?
I love that.
So yeah,
Those are great selections.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Tessa, for being here again. Mad Media, check her out on social media. Tessa Marr and Laura here with Silk and Coupe. Thank you so much, Tessa.
Awesome. Cheers.
This is how we chill from 90.